Hungry Paul woke up just before the alarm at 6 a.m., as he did most Mondays. Roughly 3 Mondays out of 4, he got a call from the post office to work a shift as a casual postman, covering for some malingering lush at the depot. And so, he liked to be up early, to answer the landline promptly, in case it disturbed his folks. Helen and Peter usually liked to talk and joke in bed for ages after lights out, like two kids on a camping trip, so they tended to sleep in most mornings. His first thought was to review what he had written the night before, to check that it had not curdled overnight. Though he was pleased with how it looked, he barely felt ownership of it. It had come to him as if from elsewhere, with no preceding stream of ideas and no trace of it in his thoughts afterwards. He went to the bathroom to spit out the morning dew and gave himself a standing wash with a face cloth, the oxters and the Adam and Eve areas being the priority. It always felt strange to look at himself in the mirror. His reflection reminding him of how little of the world he took up. He was generally tidy in his appearance, especially in his postman's uniform, which was the closest thing he had to a suit. If he didn't get his act together, he might end up wearing it to Grace's wedding. Downstairs, he took a moment to sit in stillness, listening to the silence and the gentle, high-frequency tingling in his ears that was barely audible except at quiet times like this. It was unclear whether this was a mild form of tinnitus from years of listening to headphones in his room, or whether it was just the sound of nothing happening, the ambient music of air itself. He supposed that the world was full of people who have never heard that sound. People with busy lives and even busier minds. The bird feeders swinging in the garden were empty, so he took the fat balls and seed mix out of the corner cupboard, knowing that he would find it impossible to relax over his own food until the birds were taken care of. They were ravenous at this time of year, their bodies bursting with reproductive urges. Chaffinches, grey tits, starlings, collared doves, magpies, and hooded crows all took turns at the feeder, quite literally in a pecking order. The larger birds looked like bullies at first, until he realised the service they provided to the smaller birds and making sure that the area was safe and free from predators, small creatures being innately paranoid and with good reason. Hungry Paul was not a bird watcher as such, though he loved looking at them and identifying them and being part of their lives. He never liked the collector mentality of bird watching, all that ticking off lists and valuing the obscure over the everyday. He saw birds as part of nature, just like himself, and appreciated them with kindred interest. Hungry Paul was a fan of routine and the way it had of bringing familiarity to one's life when so much else was new, changing or doubtful. As each day seemed to be fresh in its own way, he didn't feel the need to season life's innate variety with variety of his own. His breakfast was the same every morning. 3 Weetabix with banana chopped into the bowl using the side of the spoon, and a cup of strong sugared coffee. Whereas people generally try to vary their lunch and dinner habits, at breakfast it is accepted the world over that it is better to find a system and stick to it. Hungry Paul felt this way about most things. With the morning all to himself, he moved to the living room and sat by the phone. Above all things, Hungry Paul was a patient person. He saw patience as a way of allowing things to happen by themselves, trusting that things would turn out as they were meant to, not by design, but because of the innate orderliness of things. Just as he started filing the side of his thumbnail with a matchbox, the phone rang, and after a very brief, very male exchange of the barest information, he cycled to the post office, the wind blowing through his helmet. While it wasn't a career as such, he liked being a casual postman and was proud of the fact that he wasn't taking up a whole job, depriving someone else of a living. Like a small denomination stamp used to make up the balance due on a larger package, he simply covered the parts that needed covering. When he entered the sorting area where his postbag was waiting for him, the large room was particularly empty. The early rising full-timers keen to get their day started, or more specifically, finished as soon as possible. This was a busy place in a state of desertion with a lingering atmosphere of bachelorhood and strong opinions. Hungry Paul started organising the post into pigeonholes, one for each street on the route, before ordering it by house number, throwing up and setting in, as it was called. If you didn't know a street, you didn't know how to order the letters. Some streets were best done in odds and evens, others in numerical order. In semi-rural areas, where houses had names but no numbers, it was all a question of local knowledge, which was unavailable to the casual postman. In most cases, it would have made more sense just to leave the post until the next day when the regular man would be back, as hardly anything urgent went by post anymore. But they never did that. It was said that a clean bench was a clean conscience. It had turned into a nice spring morning, bright and warm on the sunny side of the street, but in the shade. There was a head cold waiting for anyone who thought it was an early summer and went out hatless. He passed kids going to school and vans running late with deliveries. It was enjoyable, just watching the general distracted activity of that part of the morning. But once he got into the estates, things are quieter. Postal workers weren't supposed to cross dividing walls, though many did. So he had to walk up and down the driveways with each front gate having its own knack. One heavy bloke, stout, Helen would have called him, was leaning over his gate, his waist a testament to the sturdy stitchwork of the sports jersey he wore. If they're bills, I don't want them. There was an old couch in his front garden and a Staffordshire Bull Terrier that was attacking a tyre hanging from a small birch tree. I'm just filling in. The regular fellow will be back tomorrow. Further on, a young woman still in her pyjamas shouted after him from her door something about bending her birthday cards. Oh, I'm just filling in. The regular fellow will be back tomorrow. He had to get an elderly lady to sign for a package in the next street on behalf of her neighbour. Yeah, they're never home. Poor kids in crashes all day. I'll drop it in later. You're a bit late today, aren't you? Oh, I'm just filling in. The regular fellow will be back tomorrow.